everyone, today's video is about social democracy in the Nordic model. Very few sources actually accurately discuss the Nordic model and what social democracy is. It can be a little confusing. Before I move on, all my sources are listed in the description. So what is a social democracy? Is it the same thing as democratic socialism? The answer to that is no. They are not the same thing. A social democracy is a political, social, and economic philosophy within socialism that supports political and economic democracy. As a policy regime, it is described by academics as advocating economic and social interventions to promote social justice within the framework of a liberal democratic polity and a capitalist-oriented mixed economy. The protocols and norms used to accomplish this involve a commitment to representative and participatory democracy, measures for income redistribution, regulation of the economy in the general interest, and social propositions. That's the definition of a social democracy. Basically, it's an economy that is similar to socialism, but is capitalist. Democratic socialism, however, is an economy that is socialist. The most common model of social democracy that people think of is the Nordic model. The Nordic countries include Iceland, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. These countries are generally thought of as being one of the best places to live on the planet. That makes sense. They have Medicare for all, a shorter work week, a year of maternity or paternity leave, stronger unions, more vacation time, and a very low poverty rate. These countries rank as one of the happiest countries in the world, and while what makes you happy is relative, a lot of people agree. I'm going to play a clip where a guy talks about the Nordic model and talks about how great it is.
Life is nice in the Nordic countries, like really, really, really nice. The 5 Nordic nations, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Iceland, rank at or near the top of almost every single OECD Human Development Index, and their citizens consistently poll among the top 10 happiest in the world. These countries aren't perfect. They do have their problems, especially with anti-immigrant nationalism right now. But they're about as good as it gets, at least on this planet. So what's the secret to their success? Why is life so nice in the Nordic nations? Well, the answer is 2 words: democratic socialism. In countries like Norway, basic services such as healthcare, childcare, education, including college, are all free. The economy, meanwhile, is heavily regulated to keep corporate greed in check, and unions represent up to as much as 70% of the workforce, guaranteeing livable salaries and sensible working hours for most people. Taxes on wealthy people naturally are high, but that's a payoff the Nordic people are willing to make. Oh yeah, and their businesses? They're doing just fine, thank you very much. There's a myth out there that big government is bad for business. But Democratic Socialist Denmark, Democratic Socialist Sweden, Democratic Socialist Norway, and Democratic Socialist Finland are all in the top 10 of Forbes' magazine's ranking of the best countries in which to do business.
In this clip, he says that these countries are democratic socialist, and he's wrong. However, he points to the ways that a more egalitarian society is possible. I think the United States can learn a lot from the Nordic model, as it proves that Medicare for all works, among other things. Here's a video by a libertarian think tank named FEE, where they talk about the evils of the Nordic model.
Dare I ask?
We need to be more like Scandinavia, so that we can be happy like them.
How do we need to be more like Scandinavia, Bob?
Their poverty rate is less than half the United States, and they have free healthcare, free higher education, free paternal leave, free vacation, free retirement, a living minimum wage, a higher happiness index score, and a higher individual GDP than the US. Scandinavia proves that democratic socialism can work.
Actually, Bob, the Scandinavian countries that people like to point to, like Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Norway, aren't really socialist at all.
What?
Not only has the Prime Minister of Denmark gone out of his way to publicly say that they're a market economy, those 4 Scandinavian countries rank about the same as the US as far as economic freedom is concerned. Yes, they have very robust welfare systems that previous administrations have put in place, but they've been trimming back both their social programs and their levels of taxation since the 1990s. once the people realized that their economies were suffering because of the expanding tax and spend social democracy policies that kept being implemented. As far as levels of poverty are concerned, national level poverty is measured comparatively to what other people in the same country are making, and where that line is set varies from country to country. Not even the World Bank will release comparative data sets on that. And all 4 countries have higher individual and family tax burdens than the US, with Sweden and Finland's being significantly higher. If you earn $54,000, once your employer has paid the necessary taxes for hiring you and you've paid your income taxes, you're left with $39,000 in the US and only $20,000 to $25,000 in Sweden. I wouldn't call that free anything.
But what about their GDP, huh?
Well, according to the World Bank's most recent data, only Norway had a GDP per capita that was higher than the US, and that's largely because of their relatively large petroleum reserves. It's also worth noting that their per capita GDP has sharply decreased in recent years.
Their high minimum wage?
By and large, it isn't set by their government. It's negotiated industry by industry between unions and businesses, usually. Bob, it's great that you want other people to be happier, but maybe we could find a way that doesn't involve government mandates or Viking horns?
Valhalla!
You can keep the Viking horns, then. Hey folks, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please check out fee.org for more educational content. Thank you.
As you can see, they talk about how bad taxes are, and that's their main argument against the Nordic model. A lot of liberals and social democrats argue that we don't need socialism. We can do a mixture of capitalism and socialism. We could have the advantages of capitalism and the advantages of socialism at the same time. They usually point to either the Nordic model or Western Europe. However, the idea of having that nice mixed economy that retains capitalism but has the advantages of socialism could never happen in the United States. This requires a thorough explanation as to why that is. Therefore, I will explain. As equal as the Nordic model may look, it's actually very exploitative, just like the United States. The Nordic model is able to have things like universal health care and a year of maternity or paternity leave because of imperialism. Western countries like Norway exploit developing countries. When people generally think of imperialism, they think of acts like that Nazi Germany did, where they invaded countries like France and tried to conquer their land. Another example could be the Napoleonic Empire, where Napoleon tried to conquer the whole entire continent. While those are examples of imperialism, those are only a part of imperialism. A lot of people think that imperialism is over, but it is definitely not. Imperialism does not have to be invading a country with an army and navy and making that country surrender. Imperialism is defined as a policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. That policy is the policy the global north depends on. Capitalism is in its imperialist phase. Some think that it is the last phase of capitalism, but others think it is not. Regardless, today's capitalist market depends heavily on imperialism. This is done to bring more profit to the bourgeoisie and also to save capitalism from revolution. There are 3 ways countries exploit the peripheral or less developed countries in the imperial world: colonial tribute, monopoly rent, and unequal exchange. I will dig a bit deeper into what these actually mean. Each one is a form of imperialism. If you know basic history, you probably know that European colonialism defined the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. Some examples of European colonies, besides the 13 colonies, are India, Haiti, Cuba, Indochina, and the African colonies. Today, these countries are independent from their colonizers, but the dozens of years of colonialism greatly underdeveloped these nations, while the colonizing countries such as Britain or France benefited so much from it. Their underdevelopment from colonialization greatly gave them a huge disadvantage following their independence and have an impact on the development of their economies today. Monopoly is the capitalist enterprise that dominates national production, setting high prices on products in order to maximize profits. Giant firms, trusts, and cartels have control over the market. Development of monopoly capitalism as a global mode of production facilitates value transfer from the exploited countries to the exploiting countries. The main problem of capital valorization, or the increase in the value of capital assets through the application of labor and production during the age of monopoly, is the production of surplus value and appropriate is monopoly rent. Monopoly rent is the difference between the price of production and the actual market price, but by corporations dominating the production and sale of commodities. Monopoly ensures that competition won't force the prices down of productive labor output, making sure they are overvalued when exchanged internationally. The domination of the world economy by northern-based monopoly has terrible consequences for developing countries. It forces the global south producers to expend labor to pay imperialist rent, super profits obtained through trade, and investment based on deep global differentials in the prices of labor power of equal productivity. Imperial rents remove about half of profits from developing countries. It ensures that extra surplus value is imported to the imperialist economy at the expense of the developing country. Monopoly rent forces developing countries to have lower wages. The global north has a capital accumulation advantage. And this is one of the reasons why there is more poverty in developing countries. The last main way of exploiting peripheral countries is through unequal exchange. Unequal exchange is the discrepancy between the value of a country's exports and that of its imports as measured in terms of labor, global market prices, or ecological footprints. Rents accumulate through unequal exchange to 1. The capitalist afforded additional profits and profit-making opportunities by the possession of monopoly, and 2. Metropolitan labor afforded higher wages based on different rates of exploitation in core and periphery countries. In order to pay for their imports, the less developed country must export primary goods to fuel the industry of the more developed capitalist country. But the higher rate of profit consequent to the diminished wage levels of less developed countries attracts capital from more developed countries, which further induces capital movement from more developed to less developed. As a result, an equilibrium rate of profit tends to emerge. As the rate of profit is equalized between the less developed and more developed countries, there is a naturally occurring transformation of value into prices internationally. The prices of commodities in more developed countries higher than their values, and prices of commodities in less developed countries lower than their values is unequal exchange. This leads to improvement in the rate of capital accumulation in developed countries and, at the same time, in the productivity of labor. As the rate of accumulation decreases in developing countries, wages there stagnate. At the same time, because the organic consumption of capital in less developed countries is lower than the average of them, it forces the prices of commodities down. Consequently, the terms of trade move against developing countries, and underdevelopment is increased. Without exploiting developing countries and stealing their wealth through imperialist measures, the Nordic model would not exist. These countries would not have Medicare for all and a year of maternity or paternity leave if they didn't steal wealth from developing countries. Those benefits are paid for through imperialism and through taxes. A lot of people point to the Nordic model as a way of mixing the advantages of capitalism, which don't exist, and the advantages of socialism, but it isn't a mix of the two. The Nordic model is just as exploitative and corrupt as the United States. Before I go on, if you are interested in learning more about imperialism, I recommend you check out the book, The Wealth of Some Nations, by Zach Cope. Most of the research done for this video is from this book, so it's the main source of this video. Now, let's look at what actually goes on inside the Nordic countries. There is still the capitalist class that exploits the working class. While there is much less inequality in the Nordic countries, there are billionaires there. Wealth is still stolen from the workers, and the workplace is still undemocratic, even though workers have better living conditions. Above all, the Nordic countries are also contributing to climate change. This is another terrible consequence of capitalism. It is not just the United States capitalist economy that contributes to climate change. The Nordic countries also have a bad immigration policy, and it is very hard for immigrants to immigrate into those countries. This is because capitalism is racist. In addition to stealing wealth, the Nordic countries often cooperate with imperialist measures from the United States. Hopefully, this video provides you with an accurate depiction of the Nordic model and debunk social democracy. As I stated earlier, there are nice things about the model that I think the United States can learn from, but the model is very exploitative and just as capitalist as the United States. Social democracy is not the answer. Socialism is. Thanks for watching my video. Please give this video a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so. I will see you in my next video. Thanks.